Have you ever noticed that the most ignorant people are often the most confident? That those who know the least speak as if they know everything, while the truly wise remain silent, doubting themselves? There's a scientific reason for this, and when you understand it, you'll start seeing the world in a completely different way. Think about the last time you watched someone defend an absurd opinion with unshakable conviction. That person who never studied medicine giving health advice as if they were an expert. The individual who read 2 internet articles and believes they understand more than scientists who dedicated decades to the subject. What's happening inside these people's minds? Why can't they see their own ignorance? The answer isn't simple arrogance. It's something much deeper, something inscribed in the very architecture of human consciousness. It's a psychological phenomenon so powerful that it affects billions of people every day, including you and me, in ways we can't even perceive. In 1999, 2 psychologists named David Dunning and Justin Kruger made a discovery that would forever change our understanding of competence and self-awareness. They realized there's a devastating inverse relationship between actual knowledge and perceived confidence. The people who know the least are precisely those who believe they know the most, not because they're malicious, but because their very ignorance prevents them from recognizing their incompetence. It's like trying to see in the dark without realizing you're blind. How can you know what you don't know if you don't have the mental tools to recognize that gap? The original study was almost comical in its revealing simplicity. They tested students on logical reasoning, grammar, and humor. The results were frightening. Participants who scored in the bottom 25% estimated their performance was above average. People who got almost everything wrong thought they'd gotten most of it right. But here's the real terror of this discovery. These individuals weren't lying. They genuinely believed their inflated assessments. Their incompetence was so profound that it made them incapable of recognizing competence when they saw it, including in themselves. Ancient philosophy already intuited this truth. Socrates proclaimed over 2,000 years ago that he only knew that he knew nothing. This wasn't false modesty. It was the profound understanding that true knowledge begins with recognizing your own ignorance. The more you learn about any subject, the more you realize the vastness of what you don't understand. It's like climbing a mountain and discovering there's an entire mountain range beyond it. Beginners, standing in the valley, look at the first hill and think they already see the top of the world. We live in an era where this phenomenon has been amplified to the extreme. Social media created global stages where anyone can proclaim expertise without qualification. Information is available, but the wisdom to interpret it remains rare. You see this every day. People sharing medical misinformation that can kill. Individuals offering financial advice without understanding basic economics. Political commentators who can't locate on a map the countries they opine about with such certainty. And most disturbing, they're not trolls. They genuinely believe they're contributing, helping, clarifying. Their incompetence makes them immune to doubt. But here's something that will bother you. Right at this moment, in how many areas of your life are you operating with this same confident ignorance? In which domains do you consider yourself competent without actually having built expertise? This is the question nobody wants to face, because the answer is always uncomfortable. We all have blind spots. We all overestimate our understanding in certain areas. The difference between wisdom and foolishness isn't the absence of these blind spots, but the willingness to recognize them. If this idea has already resonated with you, imagine what comes next. Subscribe so you don't miss this journey of discovery about the human mind and its most subtle traps. The Dunning-Kruger paradox doesn't just affect the incompetent. There's an equally devastating inverse effect. Truly competent people tend to underestimate their abilities. They know the complexity of what they know and assume others know it too. It's the imposter syndrome in action. While the ignorant walk with the confidence of a conqueror, the expert doubts every step. Think about it. True masters in any field are almost always humble, questioning, eternal students. They see nuances where others see certainties. They recognize exceptions where others apply absolute rules. This explains so much of modern dysfunction. Why do incompetent politicians manage to convince crowds? Because their ignorance makes them free from the hesitation that comes with real knowledge. They can promise simple solutions to complex problems without the weight of doubt. Why do charlatans prosper selling miracle cures? Because they don't understand science well enough to perceive their own limitations. Their unwavering confidence becomes the evidence their followers seek. After all, someone so convinced must know what they're talking about, right? Wrong. Conviction is not evidence of correctness. Often it's precisely the opposite. Let's go deeper. Why do so many people become radical in their beliefs after superficial exposure to an idea? You've seen this. Someone reads a book, watches some videos, and suddenly becomes a fervent evangelist of a new diet, philosophy, or belief system. They've barely scratched the surface, but they speak like prophets. This is Dunning-Kruger in action. That first wave of information creates an illusion of understanding. They climbed the first hill and think they've conquered the mountain. They don't realize that genuine experts, after decades studying the same subject, still express uncertainty and nuance. Neuroscience has begun mapping this. When we learn something new, our brain experiences a dopamine rush. We feel pleasure. That pleasure can create the illusion of mastery. That's why that weekend online course can make you feel like you've mastered a subject others study for years. Your brain confuses the pleasure of novelty with the solidity of expertise. It's a chemical evolutionary trap that keeps us motivated to learn, but also makes us vulnerable to premature overconfidence. But there's an even deeper secret that few know. The Dunning-Kruger effect isn't just about knowledge. It's about metacognition. It's about the ability to think about your own thinking. Competent people develop this ability to critically monitor their own beliefs and mental processes. They can step back and evaluate, do I really understand this, or do I just think I understand? This is a skill that can be developed, but it requires something radical. It requires that you become comfortable with the uncomfortable sensation of not knowing. Modern culture works against this. We're taught from an early age that not knowing is shameful, that admitting ignorance is weakness, that having immediate answers is a sign of intelligence. All of this is wrong, dangerously wrong. True intelligence lies in the ability to say, I don't know, and actually feel it as liberation, not defeat. When you can admit ignorance, you can truly begin to learn. When you protect a fragile ego by pretending to know what you don't know, you lock yourself in a prison of perpetual incompetence. Think about the wisest people you know, not the loudest, not the most confident, but the truly wise. I bet they share certain characteristics. They ask more questions than they make statements. They consider multiple perspectives before judging. They change their minds when presented with new evidence. They admit when something is beyond their expertise. These aren't weaknesses. They're cognitive superpowers that most people never develop because they're too busy defending the illusion of knowledge they don't possess. Here's the revelation that changes everything. Dunning-Kruger isn't a sentence. It's a diagnosis that points to the cure. Once you understand the mechanism, you can begin to disarm it in your own life. How? Through a deliberate process of intellectual humility. Every time you catch yourself expressing absolute certainty about something, stop. Ask yourself, how much do I really know about this? What are the counter-arguments? Who disagrees with me, and why? What might I be missing? These questions are antidotes against illusory overconfidence. Actively seek out your own knowledge gaps. Read opinions contrary to yours. Talk to real experts, not just influencers who confirm what you already believe. When someone disagrees with you, resist the impulse to immediately defend your position. Instead ask, what does this person know that I don't? Sometimes the answer will be nothing and your viewpoint will strengthen, but often you'll discover nuances, complexities and perspectives you'd never considered. This isn't defeat, it's growth. Develop the habit of studying at least one subject deeply. When you truly master something, when you spend years diving into a discipline, you develop a calibrated sense of what mastery means. This transfers. You begin to recognize the difference between superficial and deep knowledge in other areas too. You develop respect for expertise. You stop confusing familiarity with understanding. The greatest irony of the Dunning-Kruger effect is this. The moment you truly understand it, you've already begun to overcome it. The simple act of learning about this cognitive bias is a step toward the self-awareness that neutralizes it. You can't unsee what you've seen. Once you realize how your mind can deceive you into believing you know more than you actually know, you begin to question your certainties automatically. You develop a healthy inner skeptical voice that asks, really? But be careful. There's an opposite danger. Some people, upon discovering Dunning-Kruger, fall into a skeptical paralysis. They stop trusting any knowledge, including legitimate knowledge. They become so skeptical of their own abilities that they stop acting, deciding, contributing. This is also a mistake. The goal isn't to eliminate confidence, but to calibrate it. It's to develop confidence proportional to your actual competence. It's knowing when you know enough to act and when you need to learn more before opining. We live in times where this calibration has never been more critical. We face civilizational challenges that require real expertise: climate change, pandemics, artificial intelligence, biotechnology. These aren't areas where shallow opinions are harmless. The consequences of confident ignorance are measured in lives, in ecosystems, in possible futures. We need a culture that values real knowledge over the appearance of knowledge, that celebrates the admission of ignorance as the first step toward wisdom, that teaches children not just facts, but epistemic humility. The journey from confident ignorant to humble wise person isn't comfortable. It requires that you give up the armor of ego, that you accept feeling small before the vastness of what you don't comprehend, that you face the vertigo of realizing that much of what you believed you knew was illusion. But on the other side of this journey exists something precious. There exists the possibility of real growth, of genuine contribution, of honest connection with other seekers of truth. You have a choice now, in this moment. You can continue operating on autopilot, blindly trusting your unexamined certainties. Or you can wake up. You can begin to question. You can develop the courage to not know. You can become the kind of person who learns, who grows, who evolves, the kind of person the world desperately needs. Not another megaphone of shallow opinions, but a genuinely open mind, willing to do the difficult work of real understanding. The Dunning-Kruger effect shows us an uncomfortable mirror, but mirrors exist to help us see what we cannot see alone. Use this reflection. Let it transform you. Start today, now, with this simple practice. Before expressing certainty about something, pause, breathe, ask, do I really know, or do I just believe I know? This small pause can change everything. It can be the difference between perpetuating ignorance and cultivating wisdom, between being part of the problem and part of the solution. If this journey resonated with you, if you see the value in cultivating true wisdom instead of false certainty, I invite you to like this video and subscribe to the channel. Share it with someone who needs to hear this message, perhaps especially with that person who's always certain about everything. Leave a comment about an area of your life where you realize you might be operating with overconfidence. That vulnerability is strength. It's the beginning of transformation. Because in the end, the only thing more dangerous than not knowing is believing you know when you don't. And the only thing more powerful than knowledge is knowing the limits of your knowledge.